Flight attendant kicks old black billionaire family off plane, finds out they own the airline. The digital alarm clock glowed 4:30 a.m., its red numbers a stark contrast to the pre-dawn gloom. Esme Lancaster didn't groan, she simply swung her legs out of bed, a practiced movement honed over years of early mornings. Every minute was precious, a resource to be managed as efficiently as her meticulously organized apartment. First, a brisk shower, the water temperature calibrated to precisely energize, not relax. Then, the uniform, crisp navy skirt, perfectly pressed white blouse, and the Global Airlines scarf knotted just so. Her reflection revealed a woman in control, a polished professional ready to conquer the day. Breakfast was a precisely measured portion of oatmeal with berries and a protein shake, consumed standing at the kitchen counter. No time for leisurely indulgence. Today's goal: to impress Mr. Abernathy, her immediate supervisor, and perhaps even catch the eye of Ms. Du Bois, the regional director, rumored to be making an appearance at the gate. Esme knew the importance of visibility, of being seen as a star player. The commute was a blur of red lights and anxious glances at the rearview mirror, ensuring not a single hair strayed out of place. She arrived at Global Airlines headquarters with 15 minutes to spare, a margin of error that pleased her. The sprawling building buzzed with the frenetic energy of early morning departures. Flight attendants hurried past, pulling rollerboards, their faces a mix of weary resignation and forced cheerfulness. Esme navigated the chaos with a tight smile, nodding politely but avoiding prolonged conversation. She couldn't afford to be late or unprepared. She spotted Brenda, her usual gate colleague, leaning against a pillar, scrolling through her phone. Brenda's uniform was always a little rumpled, her hair perpetually escaping its constraints. Esme stifled a sigh. "Morning, Brenda," she said, her tone carefully neutral. Brenda glanced up, her eyes still glazed with sleep. "Hey, Esme. You're early as always." "Efficiency is key, Brenda," Esme replied, resisting the urge to straighten Brenda's askew scarf. "Have we received the passenger manifest yet?" Brenda shrugged. "Not yet. Relax, Esme. The plane won't leave without us." Esme's smile tightened. Relaxing wasn't in her vocabulary. She walked to the check-in desk and intercepted Ms. Abernathy. "Good morning, Ms. Abernathy. I'm ready for my assignment." Ms. Abernathy, a woman whose sharp gaze could slice through steel, barely glanced at her. "Flight 347 to Miami. You're on lead today, Lancaster. Don't screw it up." Esme swallowed, a knot forming in her stomach. Lead meant responsibility, scrutiny, and the potential for disaster. But it also meant opportunity. "Understood, Ms. Abernathy. I won't disappoint you." She collected the passenger manifest, her fingers tracing down the list of names. Business travelers, families, a few elderly couples, the usual Miami crowd. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She scanned for frequent flyer numbers, mentally noting potential VIPs. Then, her eyes landed on a block of seats near the front. Lancaster, J. Lancaster, S. Lancaster, T. Lancaster, M. Lancaster. A common name, certainly. But something about it gave her pause. She dismissed it. Probably just a coincidence. She continued reviewing the manifest, looking for any potential issues, any detail that might require her attention. This was her chance to shine, to prove her worth. The ambition took flight, a determined flutter in her chest, pushing aside any lingering unease. She would not let this opportunity pass. First class arrival. The Caldwells arrived at gate C-37 looking like they were headed to a casual brunch, not a transatlantic flight in first class. Elijah wore faded jeans and a simple linen shirt, Beatrice a comfortable knit dress and sandals, and Imani a hoodie and leggings. Only the sleek, leather carry-ons hinted at their actual status. Esme, already stationed at the boarding door, scanned their boarding passes with practiced efficiency. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Caldwell, Mrs. Caldwell, Miss Caldwell." She offered a polite, if somewhat perfunctory smile. She was on autopilot, eager to get boarding completed quickly. Elijah returned her smile with a genuine warmth that momentarily caught Esme off guard. He proceeded down the jet bridge, a slight stoop to his shoulders, followed by Beatrice, who managed a curt nod in Esme's direction, and Imani, who was already engrossed in her phone. Inside the plane, Elijah struggled to lift his carry-on into the overhead compartment. He strained, his knuckles white against the leather handle. The bag was deceptively heavy, probably filled with books, Esme surmised from her vantage point. Several passengers behind him shifted impatiently. Beatrice, already seated, observed the scene with a barely perceptible tightening of her lips. "Elijah, darling, let me!" She rose, her movements surprisingly agile for her age. Before Elijah could protest, she'd efficiently rearranged the contents of the compartment, creating enough space for his bag. "There," she said, patting the compartment closed. "Men and their packing." Imani, finally looking up from her phone, rolled her eyes good-naturedly. "Seriously, Dad? Need help with your books again?" Elijah chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "I'm not as young as I used to be, Imani." Beatrice, settling back into her seat, bumped Esme as she attempted to pass to assist with boarding. "Excuse me, dear," Beatrice said, her tone clipped as she adjusted her oversized handbag, which was threatening to consume half of the aisle. Esme, flustered, mumbled an apology. She hated when passengers blocked the aisle. She gave Beatrice a tight smile and continued her duties, but the incident had planted a seed of irritation. She made a mental note to subtly remind Beatrice about the importance of keeping the aisles clear during the flight. Imani watched Esme's retreating back, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "Mom, you and that purse. It's like a black hole in there. It holds everything I need," Beatrice retorted, digging through the bag to produce a pair of reading glasses. "Besides, that girl could use a bit of a lesson in manners. Barely acknowledged us." Elijah sighed softly. "Beatrice, she's just doing her job." He opened a worn copy of The Souls of Black Folk. His brow furrowed in concentration as he began to read. Imani leaned towards her father. "Still reading Du Bois, huh? Trying to figure out how to dismantle systemic oppression at 30,000 feet." Elijah smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "It's always a good time to learn, Imani. Always a good time." Esme, observing them from the galley, couldn't quite place them. They were wealthy, undoubtedly. But their lack of ostentation, their casual attire, and their quiet interactions didn't fit the typical profile of first-class passengers. There was something different about them, a sense of groundedness that she couldn't quite define. And the way the younger woman had looked at her, it had felt almost like a premonition. The boarding announcement crackled over the intercom. "Final boarding call for Flight 347 to London Heathrow." Esme straightened her uniform, forcing herself to refocus. She had a plane to get off the ground. Rules and assumptions. Esme's smile, tight as a drum, swept over the first-class section, her focus clinging to the Caldwells for an extra heartbeat. This was it. Operation Streamline was underway, and the Caldwells were the obvious starting point. "Madam," she began, addressing Beatrice with an overly sweet tone that bordered on cloying, "I must remind you that obstructions are not allowed in the aisle. Your handbag needs to be stowed, either in the overhead bin or beneath the seat ahead." Beatrice arched a brow, a glacial expression in her eyes. "Surely it's not inconveniencing anyone, dear. Embarkation hasn't even commenced." The handbag, crafted from supple hide, sat unobtrusively at her feet. "Company regulations, ma'am. For your well-being and that of the other passengers." Esme stood firm, a subtle jab at Beatrice's age carefully woven into her precise articulation. Beatrice's lips compressed into a thin line. "I assure you, I am perfectly capable of judging potential hazards." She remained seated, radiating an imperturbable composure that grated on Esme's nerves. Elijah, who had been observing with quiet intensity, intervened smoothly. "Beatrice, my dear, perhaps it's easier to simply comply." He offered Esme a brief, disarming smile, his gaze possessing a profound quality, as though he could see past her facade. Beatrice sighed dramatically but hefted the bag, grappling with its weight as she stowed it. Esme watched, a fleeting spark of vindication dancing in her eyes. As Elijah reached for his own, significantly lighter, travel case, Esme pounced. "Allow me, sir. You appear to need a hand." Her tone oozed with artificial concern. Elijah paused, his gaze unwavering. "I am quite able, thank you." He lifted his bag effortlessly, the subtle play of muscles in his forearm a testament to his enduring strength. Imani, engrossed with her laptop, had been silently documenting the entire exchange. She now discreetly recorded the incident with her phone, her face a study in restrained anger and calculated thought. This wasn't about baggage. It was something far more insidious. Oblivious to Imani's actions, Esme advanced further down the aisle. "Sir, your seatbelt must be fastened during taxi." "Madam, headphones are prohibited during the safety demonstration." Each pronouncement was a deliberate barb, a calculated thrust meant to undermine confidence and exert dominance. A young woman across the aisle, adorned with vibrant pink hair and a constellation of piercings, scowled. She leaned toward her companion, whispering, "Am I crazy, or is she being a complete witch?" Her friend nodded emphatically. "Totally. It's like she's singling out that family." The murmurs spread like a low-voltage current, a quiet disquiet permeating the cabin. Passengers, initially absorbed in their personal screens, began to register the unwarranted attention Esme was directing at the Caldwells. Esme, riding a wave of adrenaline and desperate to prove herself, remained deaf to the rising tide of disapproval. Consumed by enforcing petty rules and validating her position, she was playing with fire. The stakes, already significant, were about to escalate exponentially. A polite rebuke. "Esme," Imani said, her voice dangerously soft. "Was that really necessary?" Esme, who was meticulously straightening the safety information cards in the seat pocket ahead of them, didn't look up. "Necessary for what, Ms. Caldwell? Ensuring my passengers understand the safety procedures?" "Absolutely. Don't play coy. The way you spoke to my grandfather. It was dismissive, bordering on rude." Imani's fingers tightened around the armrest. She was normally composed, but Esme had struck a nerve. The air in the first-class cabin, already thick with the anticipatory hum of the engines, seemed to vibrate with Imani's contained anger. Elijah Caldwell, seated between them, remained a study in composure. He simply observed, his dark eyes sharp and knowing, like a hawk surveying its territory. Esme finally straightened, her expression a mask of professional indifference. "Mr. Caldwell asked a question. I answered it. My tone is irrelevant." "Your tone is always relevant," Imani countered, her voice rising slightly. "He's an elderly man. A little respect wouldn't kill you. Respect is earned, Ms. Caldwell, not automatically granted based on age. I treat all my passengers with the same level of professionalism, regardless of their background." Esme's blue eyes flashed, and a faint line appeared between her perfectly sculpted eyebrows. "Professionalism? Is that what you call it?" "I call it thinly veiled condescension," Imani scoffed, her gaze sweeping over Esme's pristine uniform. "You made him feel small, like he was an inconvenience. He might be old, but he has more knowledge and experience in his little finger than you'll acquire in a lifetime." A few heads began to turn in their direction. The hushed murmurs of pre-flight chatter faded, replaced by a palpable sense of unease. A businessman in a pinstriped suit craned his neck, pretending to adjust his reading glasses. Esme took a step closer, her voice dropping to a low, controlled hiss. "Look, I'm not going to stand here and debate my work ethic with you. I have a job to do, and that job is to ensure the safety and comfort of all passengers. Your grandfather received the same treatment as everyone else." "No, he didn't. And you know it." Imani stood up, her full height imposing. "You see an old black man, and you automatically assume." "Assume what, Ms. Caldwell?" Esme challenged, her hands on her hips. "That he needs extra assistance understanding basic safety instructions?" Perhaps I observed a slight hesitation, a moment of confusion. "You observed what you wanted to observe," Imani retorted. "You saw an opportunity to assert your authority, to make yourself feel superior. It's pathetic, Esme." Elijah finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. Imani dear, perhaps we should sit down. He reached out and gently touched her arm. Imani ignored him, her gaze locked on Esme. This isn't just about you being rude to my grandfather. It's about a systemic problem, about the way people like you consistently underestimate and demean people like him. And I am done with it. Esme's face was flushed now, her composure starting to crack. I resent that implication. I am not a bigot. I treat everyone with respect. Really? Imani challenged, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Then why am I standing here, having this conversation? The argument had now attracted the attention of nearly everyone in first class. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Esme swallowed, her eyes darting around the cabin. This conversation is over. Please take your seat, Ms. Caldwell. We are preparing for takeoff. Imani didn't move. The battle lines were drawn. The polite rebuke had escalated into something far more significant, something that threatened to unravel the carefully constructed facade of global airlines. Grounded. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to deplane. Esme's voice, amplified by the intercom, sliced through the cabin's drone. She stood at the front, her posture rigid, eyes narrowed as she looked toward row 4. Beatrice Caldwell straightened in her seat. Excuse me? Did you say us? Esme descended the aisle, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. Yes, ma'am. I did. She stopped at their row, her smile strained. There have been concerns raised about your disruptive behavior. Elijah Caldwell, who had been quietly reading, lowered his book. His gaze was steady, betraying none of the shock he must have felt. Disruptive? I believe you have us confused with someone else. I assure you, Mr. Caldwell, I do not. Esme's tone dripped with a condescension that Imani found infuriating. We cannot compromise the safety and comfort of the other passengers. I am going to have to insist. Insist on what, exactly? Imani interjected, her voice laced with steel. She pulled out her phone, already unlocking it. Perhaps I should start recording this little charade. Just for posterity, of course. Esme's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. I am simply following protocol. Your daughter's refusal to stow her bag properly created a safety hazard. We asked repeatedly. You refused to comply. The captain has been notified. Security will be here shortly if you do not cooperate. Imani's blood ran cold. This was beyond ridiculous. My bag contained essential medical equipment for my grandfather, and it was clearly stowed under the seat. You're lying. I am not going to debate this with you, Esme said, her voice rising. I understand this is upsetting, but the decision has been made. Elijah placed a hand on Imani's arm, a silent plea for calm. He knew Imani's temper, her unwavering need to fight injustice. He also knew that escalating the situation here, in this confined space, would only make things worse. Beatrice, he said quietly, let's gather our things. Beatrice, her face a mask of disbelief, slowly nodded. She fumbled with her handbag, her knuckles white. This is outrageous. 2 burly men in security uniforms appeared in the aisle, flanking Esme. The humiliation was complete. As they gathered their belongings, Imani glared at Esme. You haven't heard the last of this, she said, her voice low and dangerous. You can be sure we will be contacting the appropriate channels. Esme simply nodded, her expression unreadable. As the Caldwells were escorted off the plane, heads turned, whispers rippled through the cabin. Imani held her head high, refusing to let them see her shame. She would deal with this. She always did. But this felt different. This felt personal. Once outside the aircraft, standing on the jet bridge, Elijah turned to his granddaughter. Imani, please. Let me handle this. Handle it, grandfather? They just publicly humiliated us. They lied. They treated us like we were criminals. I know, child. I know. But let me make a phone call. Let's see if we can resolve this quietly. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek black phone. As he dialed, His eyes, usually twinkling with amusement, were hard and cold. Quiet was no longer an option. The call. The murmur spread like a virus, jumping from row to row, infecting conversations. "Did you see what that flight attendant did?" a woman whispered, shielding her mouth with a magazine. Her companion, a balding man with anxious eyes, nodded vigorously. "Unbelievable. Targeting them like that, and for what? Overhead space?" Further back, near the galley, 2 college students scrolled through Twitter, their faces illuminated by the blue light. "It's already trending. Hashtag Global Airlines Racism. Can you believe it?" one muttered, shaking his head. The other was typing furiously. "I got the whole thing on video. Uploading it now." The air crackled with unease. Even those who hadn't witnessed the incident firsthand felt the ripple effect of Esme's actions. It hung heavy in the cabin, a silent indictment of the smiling, ever-efficient Global Airlines brand. Meanwhile, in his sprawling corner office overlooking the city, Mr. Thompson, CEO of Global Airlines, was enjoying a rare moment of peace. Sunlight streamed through the panoramic windows, illuminating the gleaming mahogany desk and the framed photos of him shaking hands with various dignitaries. His phone buzzed, displaying an unfamiliar number. He almost ignored it, but the insistent ringing persisted. "Thompson," he barked, his voice crisp and authoritative. "Mr. Thompson, this is Elijah Caldwell." The voice on the other end was calm, measured, but held an undercurrent of steel. Thompson frowned. Caldwell, the name pricked at the edge of his memory. "Something about a flight?" "Mr. Caldwell, what can I do for you?" he asked, already regretting answering the call. He didn't recognize the name. "I believe an incident occurred on one of your flights today, involving myself and my family. Specifically, the actions of one of your flight attendants, a Ms. Lancaster, were less than satisfactory." Thompson sighed inwardly. Some disgruntled passenger complaining about peanuts or legroom. "I assure you, Mr. Caldwell, we take all customer complaints very seriously. Please direct your concerns to our customer service department." He was already mentally drafting the brush off. "This isn't about peanuts, Mr. Thompson. This is about blatant discrimination and a profound failure of your company's stated values. I suggest you familiarize yourself with the details. Because believe me, you will be hearing from my lawyers shortly." The line went dead. Thompson stared at the phone, a vein throbbing in his temple. He hated dealing with these petty grievances. He leaned back in his chair, dismissing Caldwell as another entitled winner. He picked up another call, a report on the airline's projected profit for next quarter. Profits were up, that was what mattered. Across the city, in the bustling Global Airlines crew lounge, Esme was holding court. She was surrounded by a small group of junior flight attendants, their eyes wide with admiration. "So, I just laid down the law," she said, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. "They were being completely unreasonable, taking up all the overhead space. Some people just think they can get away with anything." Another flight attendant, a timid young woman named Sarah, piped up. "But wasn't that Mr. Caldwell? I heard he's, you know." Esme cut her off with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Who cares who he is? Rules are rules. Besides," she added, leaning in conspiratorially, "someone had to show them who's in charge. Global Airlines doesn't tolerate that kind of behavior." She paused, basking in the admiration of her audience. "I am sure the incident will be forgotten by the next flight tomorrow." She paused, smiling coldly. "I was just doing what was needed." The revelation. The aroma of old money and sandalwood clung to Elijah Caldwell as he extended a hand. "Mr. Thompson, thank you for seeing me." His grip was surprisingly firm for a man of his age. Mr. Thompson, still reeling from the morning's disastrous press conference, managed a weak smile. "The pleasure is all mine, Mr. Caldwell. Please have a seat." He gestured to one of the worn leather armchairs in his modest office. The contrast between Caldwell's bespoke suit and the threadbare furniture was stark. Caldwell settled in, his gaze sweeping across the cluttered desk, lingering on the framed photo of Mr. Thompson's daughter. I appreciate your promptness in addressing the, shall we say, situation on Flight 307. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. Of course. We take all complaints very seriously. Especially ones with such visibility. The words felt hollow, even to him. He knew visibility was a gross understatement for the firestorm that Esme had ignited. Caldwell chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. Visibility indeed. You know, Mr. Thompson, I've been flying global airlines for over 40 years. I've seen its ups and downs, its transitions, its personnel changes. He paused, his eyes locking with Mr. Thompson's. And in all that time, I've never experienced anything quite so illuminating. Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably. He knew what was coming. The inevitable demand for Esme's head. Mr. Caldwell, I assure you, we are taking disciplinary action. Ms. Baker's behavior was unacceptable, and it does not reflect the values of global airlines. Caldwell raised a hand, silencing him. Disciplinary action? Is that what you call it? A slap on the wrist for blatant discrimination? For treating paying passengers like chattel? Mr. Thompson felt a prickle of anger. He wouldn't let this man bully him, despite the precariousness of his position. Mr. Caldwell, I understand your frustration, but… Frustration? Caldwell's voice rose, the sandalwood scent seeming to intensify. Mr. Thompson, you have no idea. You think this is about a missed flight? About a bruised ego. This is about something far larger. Something systemic. Something deeply ingrained. He leaned forward, his eyes glittering. Tell me, Mr. Thompson, do you know who owns global airlines? Mr. Thompson frowned. The board of directors, naturally. And the shareholders. He rattled off the names of the major players, the investment firms, the faceless corporations. Caldwell smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of his lips. Ah, yes, the public face of ownership. But behind the curtain, Mr. Thompson, behind the curtain lies the real power. The ultimate decision-makers. He paused for dramatic effect. The Caldwell family, Mr. Thompson. The Caldwell family owns global airlines. The words hit Mr. Thompson like a physical blow. He felt the color drain from his face. The Caldwells? His Caldwells? The quiet philanthropists, the ones who rarely made public appearances, the family whose vast wealth was only whispered about in hushed tones. They owned global? He swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. I wasn't aware. It was a pathetic understatement. He was the head of customer relations. He should have known. Caldwell's smile widened, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Now you do. And now you understand the gravity of the situation. My family's airline. Treating my family like that. Mr. Thompson's mind raced. He had to contact Esme. Warn her. But warn her about what? He barely understood the implications himself. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers trembling as he searched for Esme's number. Going somewhere, Mr. Thompson? Caldwell asked, his voice suddenly soft, dangerous. Mr. Thompson ignored him, pressing the call button. It went straight to voicemail. He cursed under his breath. He had to reach her. Before it was too late. Confrontation. The grainy security footage flickered on the monitor, each frame a fresh jab to Elijah Caldwell's gut. Beatrice, his wife, looked smaller than usual, her face a mask of forced composure as she struggled with her carry-on. Imani, his granddaughter, stood stiffly beside her, radiating a quiet fury that made the hairs on the back of Elijah's neck prickle. Play it again, Imani said, her voice dangerously low. Elijah watched, helpless, as Esme Lancaster's sharp words echoed through the sterile office. He saw the dismissive wave of her hand, the tight line of her mouth as she directed his family off the plane. The casual cruelty of it. He clenched his fists so hard his knuckles ached. Enough, Beatrice said finally, her voice a thin thread in the tense silence. I don't want to see it again. Imani swiveled, her gaze fixed on her grandfather. This wasn't just a mistake, grandfather. This was deliberate. It was humiliating. Elijah sighed. I know, sweetheart. And it won't go unaddressed. He picked up the phone. Get Thompson in here. Now. Esme was reviewing the updated passenger manifest, a small knot of satisfaction tightening in her chest. Flight 307 was back on schedule, the delay minimized. She prided herself on efficiency, on solutions. A sharp rap on the door startled her. Mr. Thompson's assistant, a nervous young man named David, hovered in the doorway. Ms. Lancaster, David stammered. Mr. Thompson requests your presence. Immediately. A chill snaked down Esme's spine. Thompson rarely summoned anyone, let alone a junior supervisor like herself. She followed David through the maze of cubicles, her mind racing. Had she missed something? A regulation violation? A complaint she hadn't addressed properly? Mr. Thompson's office was usually a sanctuary of calm, but today, it crackled with an almost visible tension. Thompson, his face grim, gestured to the two figures standing by the window, their backs to her. Ms. Lancaster, Thompson said, his voice unusually tight. I'd like you to meet Mr. and Ms. Caldwell. Esme's breath itched. Caldwell. That name, she'd seen it on countless memos, board meeting minutes, the employee handbook. Caldwell. The owners of Global Airlines. The couple turned. Elijah Caldwell's face was a study in controlled anger. Beatrice Caldwell's eyes held a deep, unreadable sadness. And standing slightly behind them, a young woman with eyes that burned with righteous indignation. Ms. Lancaster, Elijah Caldwell said, his voice a low rumble that filled the room. Perhaps you can explain your actions regarding Flight 307. Esme's carefully constructed world began to crumble. She stammered, Mr. Caldwell, I was simply trying to adhere to the schedule. There was a delay. A delay that you chose to solve by removing my wife, my granddaughter, and me from the aircraft. Imani interjected, her voice sharp and precise. Tell me, Ms. Lancaster, what criteria did you use to determine who should be inconvenienced? Esme felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She opened her mouth to speak, to defend herself, but the words caught in her throat. The magnitude of her mistake crashed down on her. This wasn't just a schedule adjustment gone wrong. This was catastrophic. Elijah Caldwell stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. My granddaughter believes this was a deliberate act, Ms. Lancaster. Driven by prejudices. I want to believe she is wrong. Convince me. A second chance. Elijah's voice, a low thrum, resonated within the confines of his plush office. Esme, my disappointment runs deep. He tented his fingers, sunlight flashing against his signet ring. Your actions were precipitous, prejudiced, and displayed a stunning disregard for the Caldwell family, and frankly, for the integrity of this airline. Esme's throat constricted. The initial triumphant flush of removing those passengers had long since dissipated, leaving behind a glacial dread. She'd done more than inconvenience travelers. She'd affronted the airline's very owners, publicly humiliating them. I understand, Mr. Caldwell, she managed, her voice a strained whisper. I acted rashly. There was a grave error in judgment. Elijah's gaze intensified, piercing. An error? Is that how you characterize it? My wife, my daughter, and myself subjected to suspicion and treated as potential threats, simply because we deviated from your narrow expectations of first-class clientele? Beatrice, silent until now, interjected with quiet firmness. The experience was deeply unpleasant, Esme, and reliving it offers no solace. Let us concentrate on preventing future occurrences. Seated beside her mother, Imani fixed Esme with an unwavering stare. She leaned forward. The algorithms, of course. Your ingrained bias merely affirmed the AI's flawed assessment, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of prejudice. Esme squirmed under Imani's incisive gaze. The system indicated a possible issue. She conveniently omitted her eagerness to accept its assessment without question. Elijah sighed, massaging his temples. Termination would be the straightforward solution, Esme, and a part of me advocates for it. He met her gaze directly. But my family and I also champion second chances, growth, the potential for transformation. He rose and strolled to the window, surveying the sprawling cityscape below. We've invested significantly in diversity and inclusion at Caldwell Air, far beyond mere lip service, Esme. It's about cultivating genuine respect, understanding, and equality. Turning back, his expression was grave. We are offering you a position within that program. Esme's jaw slackened. You want me to join the diversity program? Not as an instructor, Esme. Imani clarified, a glint of steel in her tone. As a student. An active, engaged participant. You will undergo intensive sensitivity training, participate in community service within underserved communities, and fundamentally reevaluate your assumptions. Only upon demonstrating verifiable remorse and a dedication to change will we consider reinstating your flight privileges. Beatrice added, regarded as an opportunity, Esme, to evolve into a more empathetic individual. Esme stared, her mind reeling. This wasn't the swift dismissal she'd braced for. This was something far more complex. A lifeline, perhaps, but tethered to a challenge. A deeply uncomfortable, potentially mortifying one. Yet, she also perceived the resolve in Elijah's eyes, the quiet strength radiating from Beatrice, and the unwavering conviction in Imani's. They weren't just tossing her a rope, they were charting a new course. I accept, she croaked, the words barely audible. I accept your offer. The following week dissolved into a whirlwind of workshops, seminars, and agonizingly honest conversations. Esme attended lectures on implicit bias, microaggressions, and the deeply rooted history of systemic prejudice. She volunteered at a neighborhood community center, assisting with after-school programs for at-risk youth. She spent countless hours listening to stories that painted worlds vastly different from her own. It was excruciating, yes, but also illuminating. A dawning shame washed over her as she realized it was precisely what she needed. The world, she began to comprehend, was infinitely larger, exponentially more nuanced than the carefully constructed haven she had inhabited. And she had been so terribly, tragically blind. The path ahead stretched long and arduous, she knew. But for the first time in an age, a fragile hope flickered within her. The hope that she could learn, evolve, truly transform. A second chance, terrifying in its implications, yet possibly the most profound gift she had ever received.